Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going over the building hype for the PlayStation VR 2 and the top 5 reasons why you should be excited even if you're not a PlayStation fan. With less than a week before release, we now have new trailers, new game announcements, free upgrades, a hardware breakdown, and plenty of positive reviews. I'm currently hard at work getting my own PlayStation VR 2 content ready, but as of making this video, there's still plenty of embargoes in place, but we also have a lot of new information to go over that is definitely adding to the overall hype level. Now I'd love to hear you sound off down in the comments, letting me know if you plan to get a PlayStation VR 2 and why or why not. Like normal, there are links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead. And today's topics are ordered from least to most significant, starting off with VR is progressing. Regardless if you plan to get a PSVR 2 or not, this is a great sign for the industry. It means one of the leading video game hardware developers believes VR is still a worthy investment. It's also going to introduce millions of new gamers to our favorite hobby, and VR also desperately needed more competition. So even if you plan to stick with Meta or PCVR, this will either force them to up their game to remain competitive, or you might see an influx of new games ported from the PlayStation VR 2. So this right here is a win for everybody, and at minimum it means that VR is still growing. But let's move on to free upgrades. Now this one is primarily for the PlayStation VR 1 owners, but it will also impact newcomers. While a lack of full backwards compatibility between the PlayStation VR 1 and the PlayStation VR 2 was definitely a blow to the community, a large portion of developers have already put out free upgrades to anyone who previously purchased their games. At the moment, there's over 20 excellent games such as Demeo, After the Fall, No Man's Sky, and Zenith. But it doesn't stop there because they're also giving us enhanced versions of many games previously released. The next time you jump back into No Man's Sky or Song in the Smoke, it might feel like a completely new experience. I'm looking forward to jumping back into games like Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge because the Quest 2's graphic fidelity totally killed the immersion for me on that title, and I believe that game has the potential to look so good because it uses official LucasArts assets. Well, let's move into an overlooked topic that makes the PlayStation VR 2 so appealing, and that's simplicity. Unlike the original PlayStation VR that had a complicated breakout box system, an external camera, and an array of different controllers, the PSVR 2 is just much simpler. It's a single USB connection that'll have you up and running in seconds. You also won't be dealing with finding the ideal spot for your camera, nor switching between the DualShock, aim, or move controllers depending on the game you decided to play. Now, thanks to their years of experience, Sony knows how to streamline everything. The user interface is extremely intuitive and will have you up and gaming as quick as possible. It's extremely straightforward and requires no external intervention. If you've dealt with PCVR, you know at times it could be a bit of a headache, especially if your headset requires additional hardware like base stations, or you run into software-related issues. Now, while my overall experience with PCVR has been quite excellent, I have had some significant headaches along the way, especially back in the Vive days, or with more enthusiast-level hardware like Pimax headsets. Now, you would think as a standalone package, the Quest would be a streamlined device, but that's not exactly my experience. Sure, the setup is pretty straightforward and only requires a cell phone, but the user interface can be extremely frustrating, constantly changing things for no reason, suffering from performance issues, requiring you to restart fairly often, and it's just outright slow. So I'm just more than ready for the streamlined experience that the PlayStation VR 2 will bring. And it's also going to be a lot easier for amateur content creators. Now, I'm sure plenty of people will still want to use a capture card and an OBS setup for more customization, but the fact that sharing is just baked right into the hardware itself makes things a lot easier, and we can expect to see a lot more VR content in the near future. Now, another aspect that I'm really excited for is the no gimmick new hardware. While I've discussed how PSVR is not the top of the line in terms of what's available right now, but it is similar to something like the Valve Index in terms of being a full package design that makes the right concessions. It would have been great if this headset included pancake lenses, as it would have significantly slimmed down the design, but then Sony wouldn't have been able to use those ultra vibrant OLED panels. And even though the headset is a bit bulkier than recent releases, this doesn't mean it's uncomfortable because unlike the Quest 2, it doesn't require a battery or additional hardware. Weight is usually the biggest factor when it comes to comfort, but this is a subjective topic. Additionally, we're seeing the introduction of new features. The controllers are a huge leap forward, especially compared to what they had on the original PlayStation VR, and they feature incredible haptic feedback, and those DualSense triggers are absolutely fantastic. Triggers might not sound like a big deal, but it's hard to explain unless you've used the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. The additional head haptics undoubtedly add additional immersion, and eye tracking is not only a new feature, but also provides a huge performance boost with foveated rendering. At the feature level, it allows for things like selecting your weapon with your eyes, or have enemies attack anytime you blink in a horror game, and on the performance side, it allows a PlayStation 5 to outperform many high-end PCs. I'm sure this will be a touchy topic for the PC VR Master Race, but between the PlayStation 5 being optimized specifically for gaming and the combination of foveated rendering, the PSVR 2 has apparently been outperforming gaming rigs equipped with RTX 3090 Ti's.
But I have an RTX 4090! Your puny PlayStation VR can never compete with me! May your frame rates be high and your temperatures low.
Now, I'm sure this will vary per game, but it's a lot more horsepower than the average player is used to. But VR is not all about horsepower, so let's move into the most significant topic, the games. Games are undoubtedly the biggest reason I'm looking forward to the PlayStation VR 2. The entirety of 2022 only delivered us a handful of good VR games. Besides Bone Lab, I wasn't really hyped for any releases, and looking forward into 2023, the only non-PlayStation VR 2 game that I can't wait to try is Vertigo 2. Now, if you're just getting into VR for the first time, the PlayStation VR 2 lineup is definitely limited compared to PC VR or Quest, but what it lacks in quantity, it makes up in quality. Not only does it have enhanced versions of some of the most popular VR games, but it's finally bringing AAA titles back to VR, something that hasn't happened since 2019 with Half-Life Alyx. There's undoubtedly something for everyone. High-quality racing with Gran Turismo 7, horror action-adventure with Resident Evil Village, military shooters like Firewall Ultra, and much, much more. Now, I'm personally hyped for Crossfire Sierra Squad, a high-action co-op FPS that I can play through with a buddy, which is exactly what I'm looking for right now. But of course, we can't forget about Horizon Call of the Mountain, which IGN said is an enjoyable, if not essential chapter into the Horizon story, featuring awesome spectacle and gripping combat, packed with exciting encounters. And on the topic of IGN, in their recent PlayStation VR 2 review, they showed off an amazing montage of gaming footage, and finally we're looking at games that appear to be from the current generation, rather than what we typically see with the Quest, which is games that look like they either belong on Nintendo 64 or the PlayStation 3. And to make things even better, only 1 week before release, we got a whole list of new games coming to the PlayStation VR 2. This includes Project Wingman, Gorn, Wanderer, Green Hell, Kill It With Fire, and supposedly Solaris Off-World Combat 2 was leaked, which I'm skeptically optimistic for. So if the PlayStation VR 2 and its upcoming games isn't exciting enough for you, I want to hear down in the comments right now, what games are you currently playing instead?
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
Consider subscribing.
consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing. We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.